Hi, I'm Brian Dane, a Principal Systems Engineer at EMC specializing in software-defined storage. This video is a supplement to a paper I wrote on object storage and chargeback, specifically EMC's Elastic Cloud Storage, or ECS, and how you can plan for and implement a chargeback reporting system using EMC Viper SRM. Now, you may have come to this video through a link in the paper I wrote, or maybe you just found it online, but regardless, let's get into this. What I'm going to show you in this video is how you can take a built-in report in Viper SRM and modify it to meet your specific chargeback reporting requirements.
Here's the standard Viper SRM user interface view that you see when you log in. Notice that I've already created my own Broncos custom reports folder into which I'm going to put my custom report. Now I want to create my own custom chargeback by bucket owner report, and I'll make my job easier by copying the built-in report called chargeback by bucket and then modifying it instead of creating one from scratch. So to do that, I'll go into edit mode and find the chargeback by bucket report under dashboards. The reason that the built-in chargeback by bucket report does not meet my requirements is that it's a per namespace report. In other words, notice here that the built-in report is under the namespace report, which means that the report as is will show only buckets in the selected namespace. What I need is a listing of all buckets regardless of namespace. So I'll select the report, click copy up on the toolbar, and now I can scroll down to my Broncos custom report folder, select it, and paste it in there. So I'll select the folder, come up to the toolbar and click paste. Now, when you click paste, you see two options. One is N, which you should use when you're pasting the report within its original context, and F, which is what I want when you're pasting it outside of its original context. Notice here on the right that all the filters from the chargeback report, as well as its parent node reports, came over in this copy. This is important because we need most of these filters for this report. So now we'll go back to browse mode, and let's see what we have in our report folder. We'll come in, there it is, Broncos. We'll drill into it, and there's nothing. All right, that means we still have some work to do. So let's go back to edit mode. I'll come up again, click on edit mode, and notice the report is not there on the right in the editor. I actually need to select it on the left. So I'll come over to the folder, find the chargeback by bucket report, and select it. The first thing I want to do, let's change the name. Let's differentiate it from the original report. So I'll call it chargeback by bucket all namespaces. There's also a display policy down here that I want to change. I want to change it to always show the node even when there's no data in the report. So we'll make that change. Let's scroll down. I'm going to click save, and then I'll come back up to browse mode, and let's see what we've accomplished. Well, there's the report. Oh, it's listing many times. I know what's happening. It's listing out per namespace. That means in edit mode, there's an expansion property per namespace that we need to change. So let's go back into edit mode. We just did. We'll come over to my report, the chargeback by bucket, the all namespace version of it. Notice down near the bottom, you see expansion. There's the expansion property by namespace. I'm going to delete that because I don't want expansion per namespace. We come over to the right, we'll scroll down, click save again, and let's see what we've ended up with. I'll come back to browse mode. As you can tell, I like to go back and forth and see the results of my work. There's the chargeback by bucket all namespaces report, but there's nothing in it. Let's select it, and again, no data. So I still have some more work to do. Let's go back to edit mode and make some final changes to make this copy-paste process work. Notice all the filters. There's a couple filters in there for a property called W4N cert, and there's one of them. I don't need these for this report. So I'm going to remove those two. Those two are only good for reports that are up in the global namespace, the global reports, not the individual reports. So I just remove those two filters. This is also a bucket report, so I do not need the part type filter for namespace. So I'm going to remove it, and I think this should do it. Let's save it. We'll come back to browse mode. And let's see what the result is. Well, there's a report. Looks like a lot of buckets on the left. And look on the right. My report is now fully populated, and it looks like I've finally finished editing and creating this report using the copy-paste process. I want to finish up this report by customizing it to meet my requirements and scheduling it. So first, notice that the namespace column is not in this report. Since I have multiple namespaces in my ECS architecture, I need to know which namespace each bucket is located in. So let's add that column by going into Edit mode and selecting the Report Details Table tab. So since namespace is a property, I'll click on Add New Property and scroll down, and we'll give it information for this column. I'll name the column Namespace, and then give it a description that'll be helpful to the people viewing the report. And I happen to know that the property for namespace is NS in lowercase. So we'll type in NS, scroll down, and select that property. Now the column's been added, but it's not where I want it. So I'm going to scroll up. I want this column right after the bucket column in the report. So we'll drag this new column up to just under bucket, and that's where I want to see it in the report. Now I also want to change the sort order. Right now, the report is sorted by bucket name and then owner. I want to swap those two. I want it sorted by owner and then bucket. So I'll swap those two. I'll click OK. And then I need to make one more change. Since the finance department handles costs, I don't need this total cost column in the report. So I'll select the column and delete it. And there's the Save button. We'll save the report, and that part of the changes are done. Now, based on my object storage chargeback model, I also need to modify the time range. My chargeback model requires that consumers of ECS capacity each be billed each month for their previous calendar month's average utilization. To ensure this report meets those requirements, I'll click on the Report Configuration tab. Notice that the sampling type is already set at average, which meets my chargeback model requirements, but the default duration is not. Right now it's set at last. That's not what I need. I need this report to include data from the previous full month. So I'll select Previous, leave the time range at 1 month, and click Save. Now let's go back to Browse mode and see what it looks like. You can see namespace has been added as a second column in the report, and there's a description that we added when I hovered over the report. Also notice the little 1 on the owner column and the little 2 on the bucket column. Those indicate the sort order that we created. And notice finally over on the right that the total cost column is gone. So at this point, this report meets my chargeback requirements.